Hi, welcome to FilmyCG.net. In this tutorial, we are going to create this nice effect, and this is the scene file, composited scene file. You can see our text layer, 66th Independence Day for our country, India, and this is the flag. If we check our scene file, and this is the scene file, and okay, you can see I have some camera animation and some cloth animation also. So we are going to recreate this scene from scratch. So I'm just using a new reload start file and delete the default cube. So first of all, I'm going to add the text. So add a text, and this will be added here. Just I'm going to rename it as 66, and I'm going to rotate 90. Okay, so I have the text and it is looking towards the camera on the front, and we are going to add some font decoration and also some interesting 3D depth for this font. First of all, I'm going to add it to the center of the grid, changing its size to 5, so it's big enough, and just change some font, something, maybe this is bold. Okay, and I like this font. And we need the 3D depth. In order to get the 3D depth, just increase the extrude to 1, so it is so big, we don't need that much. Change it to 0.5. Okay, that's enough for this, and we need some more smoothness to these edges. Select depth 0.05 is big enough, and 0.01, okay, that is okay, and resolution to 3, that will smooth. And I'm just going to rename it to 66 so we can identify this text. And one more thing, we need a new material, and just rename it to red, and just change the color value to red. So just press all this to 0, and this is our text, and we don't need any kind of specular, but we can just change it later while we do the cycles render. And we need to copy, Shift D, and also just change a new material and rename it to white. So we have the white text, and just rename it to white so we can just identify that. And in the extrude option, just decrease it to 0.45, I think a little bit higher, 0.47, that's okay, and a little bit offset, just increase the offset so it is just fitting. You may increase a little bit also. Okay, that's enough for this text. And so we have our text, and I'm going to parent these together. So select both the text, Ctrl P, object. So we have our text objects parented. The white one is the parent object, and the red one is the child object. I'm going to duplicate this, Shift D, and just set. I'm going to duplicate both of these, so select both of these, Shift D, and we are going to move it to y-axis. Just move like this, maybe a little bit towards the front. Okay, that's okay. So we have text. I'm just renaming it to independence. So we need to change it to independence first. Also independence. Just change size to 1. Also this to 1 and see what's happening. So now we have some weird result. First of all, we need to change the extrude value to 0.1. For this white text, use 0.909, and we get some weird result. Just we don't need that much offset value, just decrease. Okay, now it's looking just fine, and we don't need that much depth. So 0.005. This also 0.005. Okay, that's too much smooth. 0.001 and also 0.001. Okay, that's just perfect for this, and we need to change it. In the edit mode, I'm just going to change it to independence. There. Also this tab, backspace, independence. There. Now we have our independence data text, and we need a red. Change the color value something green. Just deleting this material, new material, change it to green. Simply change the color to green. So now we have text, and first of all we are going to just focusing our camera. For press a camera view, this is the camera. We don't need this kind of camera, just focus it. Press N and use low camera to view. Just rotate and use like this, and just in the rotation panel just use this value 0, I think this will be 95, and just move a little bit higher, so it's just looking fine. And maybe X0, Z also 0, and just a little bit down. Okay, this will be our final view. Before finalizing this, just in the camera view, change the camera preset. You can use any kind of this. I'm just using Nikon D9D, and just zoom out a little bit. You can just use this value. Okay, and in the render settings, I'm just using HD 720p, and the camera view also just use safe area, so we can see our text is cutting these frames. I just want it to be in the center of within the safe title area, so just make sure like this. So we have our text and camera is fixed, and the problem is that I just want this 66 to be to the left, so select our text, that is this one. I think I just forgot to rename it, also 66. Just move towards the left like this, and independence data text towards the right like this. Okay, so this is the final view for our scene. Just save the scene, the 66, save. Okay, now we just set our camera and the basic scene, and we need a ground. So just add a plane, simply scale it a little bit higher. So this is our ground plane. and just make sure that it is correctly placed. Okay, now the problem is that you can see our text is cutting. Just simply make it to top, just move it top so it is just sitting outline. Okay, I'm just going to change this plane to ground, and what we need is just add our default white material. So we have our plane and all these settings. Next, what we need is our flag. For creating that, I'm just using mesh grid and rotate it to the 90-degree front view. Just move a little bit upward, scale it down, and remember we are going to stimulate this as cloth object. So in order to get a good stimulation, we need a properly spaced vertices for this object. So just look at that. In the edit mode, we can see the vertices are properly aligned. If we scale non-uniformly and something like this, and if you check the vertices, you can see now it is not all the square, and this will create a lot of problem while doing the cloth simulation. So just remember that, just do that. Okay, now what we need is in the edit mode, just duplicate this and give a little gap here. Also do the same, give a little bit gap, do the same, give a little bit gap, and see our camera it's not covering too much. We need one more, and do one duplicate also. So we have our flag. It's just covering the scene, so that is enough. And in the edit mode, just select these vertices. So wherever the gap is, just select that, press W and just bridge edge loops and select this area. Do the same. And we have our cloth object. Just adding a new plane. Before that, we can just rename it to cloth or maybe flag, and just new material and rename it to flag white. And this is our white color, maybe just little bit blue, that's enough. And we need 3 color for our Indian flag. For top red and bottom green, we are going to using vertices color. So just press select all these top vertices and add a new material. Just add new material, new, and rename it to flag red, and change the color towards a little bit towards orange red. And this is our red, and we need to assign this. So assign that will be assigned. Do the same for the bottom. Add a new material, new, rename it to flag green, and just use the green value. Just use the green value, and just it should be more dark. So we have our green material, and just assign that also. Now we have our flag. Next thing what we need is to assign the render settings and the lighting. So we just skip to cycles render, and that will change a lot of things here. We are going to use nodes for this and just default diffuse. So for this also and this also, select other materials, and also for the red and for the green use nodes, and every white is already applied. And if we just render, you can see now a little bit lighting is here because we have a default light. Just save the scene once again, and we are just going to change the lighting a little bit in the top view. Just make it sure it's towards the center, and you can just turn off the spot that cast shadow off. You just use nodes like this and just render again. See, now we have a little bit lighting here. I'm not going to increase anything like it, but I'm going to add some settings for this. So in the render settings, we need to add, just use GP compute that will do best rendering for this. There are a lot of options here. I'm not going to do anything here. In the world mode, you can see that surface, use nodes, just use nodes, and the background change it to the white color, so that will increase the lighting a little bit more. Just in the solid view, just going to add another mesh plane, just increase to top, and in the top view just scale it a little bit higher, so we can just make sure that it is just covering our whole scene. Our cloth also just a little bit higher. Okay, so this is our lighting plane, and we need to change it to the light. So add a new material, change it to emission, and one more thing, just rename it to emission, and also applying to emission, so we can select it later. And if we render, what is the problem is occurring is that will also render in the scene, and this now our scene is a little bit brightened up, and you see a lot of things happening here. So what I'm going to do is simply increasing it to 1.5, so that will lighten a little bit more, and we don't need that plane to be rendered in the viewport. So if I just look in the top view, you can see that plane. So simply in the object properties mode, ray visibility, turn off the camera, that will hide, and now you can see our objects are rendering, and this is the scene I'm just going to use for the final output. And also if you want, you can just increase the lighting a little bit higher, but that is not enough. Sorry, that's enough. If you want, just increase a little bit higher also, so you will get something like this area. And if you need to cover this area up, so just increase the emission and scale it a little bit higher, so that will cover all the area, and you will get only this white text and some more interesting effect like this. And I think that is pretty good. A little bit higher value, this is too much, so 1.5, and just make sure you only get this kind of effect. Okay, I think that's enough for this kind of rendering, and just saving the scene once again, and maybe in the solid view just save once again. And the next thing, we are going to do the cloth simulation first, or we can do that's later. I'm just going to add a camera motion. So in order to get a proper camera, I'm just making it to another layer. We can just bring it back. So in order to get a proper camera motion, we need some more precise control. If I just animate this, this will be very rude kind of camera movement. So I'm just adding a simple constraint for this. So in the camera, just add a constraint, track to, and that will ask for a tracking option. So just add an empty plane axis, and you can just rename it to camera pivot, and that will be for our camera's track point. Where is that camera pivot? And that will change our camera rotation. Just use -z as that to the option, and in the up axis just use as y axis, or just you can just use the z axis also. And if I change select our camera pivot, and if I rotate like this or move like this, no rotation is happening. It is because our camera constraint is wrongly adjusted. So just use up to y axis. So now we can simply select and just rotate like kind of this. So that will do the rotation. Press M and just using the location to the default. Okay, and now we constrain our camera, and in the camera view we can see now it is some sort of problem is occurred. So we can just move like this. So it is just in the center like this, and select our camera also. We need some a little bit like this. Okay, maybe I can change this area to camera view, 3D view. Use camera, press N. Okay, that's our camera view, and we didn't need this. So just moving the little bit upwards like this, or just downward, or anything like this. I think we need a little bit scale value for this plane also. Okay, so to cover all the scene up, and this is our final setting. So we are going to render it in 250 frames. In the 200 frame, just set a keyframe for the camera, insert keyframes. Also for our pivot, where is our pivot, camera pivot, also just insert keyframes. So, and in the 216th frame, I need a simple motion like this, a little bit like this, and also insert keyframes. So we have our camera motion like this. I think in the 200 frames, I need the pivot should be more towards the front, so I can do some more constraints. So just add another replace keyframes. So that is enough for this. And in first frame, what we need is, I just need my pivot, and the camera should be here like this, just crossing to the just backward. Okay, just add a keyframe, and also camera pivot a keyframe. So camera pivot and insert keyframes, and the camera also. And if I scrabble at the 14th frame, I need my pivot should be here, very close. So add another keyframe, and here at the 14th frame I need my camera also like this. So just add another keyframe. So in maybe in the 16th frame I need my pivot point should be, camera pivot should be here. So it's just focusing like this, and just adding a keyframe, and my camera so need some more things. I'm just using local rotation axis, so just move a little bit downward. Okay, so that is for like this, and 100th frame I need my camera like this, and maybe a little bit down. Add a keyframe, and also the pivot should be more towards this area, and a little bit downward. Add another keyframe. So we have some motion like this and something like, and maybe at the 140th frame I need my pivot point towards the center, little bit like this, and add a keyframe. So something like this. And that is too much. It is too much towards that area. So just like this. Replace keyframe. Maybe in this area I need my camera is a little bit upward, so we can just avoid the camera cutting. Replace keyframes, and look what is happening like this. Okay, so we have some nice camera movement. Add a keyframe here and delete next keyframe, delete keyframes, and also next keyframe I don't need that, just delete that keyframe, and see what's happening. Okay, that is enough. So we just animated our scene, and what we need is to smooth these things. If I just like used Graphium, what is that? Graph editor, we can see this is our graph for our MD node and the camera. I'm just selecting all of these, just use A for selection, and maybe a thing here, key, interpolation mode, Bezier, and also handle type to auto clamped. And see what's happening here. Just deselect all this and simply play. Stop that in the camera. So what is happening is that here we have some 30. I need a keyframe, insert keyframes, and in the 40 I don't need that. Just delete and see what's happening. Just play once again and see we need keyframes thing here, 120, add a keyframe, and 100 I don't need that keyframe, delete keyframes. Just play the scene once again, see what's happening. Okay, that's enough for this kind of effect. And I think also we need to add some more thing. Just using the camera pivot, I'm going to add another keyframe value here, 40, 60, okay, and maybe I think this is okay for now. And insert keyframes, just delete this, delete keyframes. So we have some smooth, anything 120 is add keyframe. I don't need the previous keyframe, so just delete that and see what's happening. Something like this. Next we need is the cloth stimulation. What we need is we need to change our clothes. So just using back to properties. So this is our clothes, so I need to be stimulated. So I think we can just select these two and just move it to this, so we don't confuse with that. So I need to change this into cloth. If I just use simple cloth and physics properties, I'm just using that cloth, and you can see a lot of options here. I'm just using the silk as default, and if I simply play the scene, this will fall down. And if I want a collision with that, just use it as collision and simply play once again. You can see now our cloth is colliding, and just use smooth also and play once again. So now the cloth having the smooth. So there is one option called pinning, so that will ask for a vertex group, so we don't need any vertex group. So select our cloth in the front view, just edit view, just see we need to select two vertices. So I'm just selecting maybe three vertices or four. Okay, that's okay, 4 vertices. And in the vertex group, add a vertex group, you can change it to pinning, and remember you need to assign this. So just press assign and jump back to edit object mode, select that pinning and just play the scene. So now it's pinned there, and I need a force field, some wind, so that frag will be flying. So add a force field named wind, and that is here. Just renaming it to field to wind, and increasing the strength to something 200, and because our scene scale is too big and need noise, increase the noise, and also just turn off the flow and just play the scene. Still there is a little bit wind is affecting, so that we need to increase it to something called 1000 and just play the scene. So now it's too much blowing away the scene, and what can we do is just move it here and rotate in y-axis maybe 60. That's enough, and we need to get that's enough for this. So just look at in the camera view what is happening. Okay, now our cloth is stimulating, and we have country flag is flowing like this. And so just save the scene once again, go back to scene, select our cloth, and we just adjusted everything. And if you check one more thing, if you see any kind of some sort of weird movement is occurring like this, so just use clothes, maybe cloth collision, just use self collision. So just play 1 second, a little bit slower, but you can see a lot of good motion. And now we have some smoother option. And if you need a more smoother cloth, just add a modifier and just use thing, just using a subdivision modifier, and just play the scene and see now our cloth having a little bit higher smoothness. So just save the scene once again, and what we need is to assign this cloth cache. So we have our scene just set up, just rename it to flag, and you can just use this cache and also select that, just play the scene. So that will cache this to the disk, and after that we can just bake that. So that will take some time. You can see that will baking our cloth for that much frame. Just wait for that. Okay, and now simulation is baked, so you can just play it like this, back and forth. So just save the scene once again. Now it's time for rendering. So in the render tab, we just set our HD 720p. We need to set some more thing. Just use our to scene directory. Have the scene directory plugged in here, and just using that renders already created. If you don't have, just create that and just rename it to maybe independence. Just accept that, and I'm not going to render pass or any render layer for this, so just that is enough. And I'm not going to any composite for this kind of effect, just so there is no option for RGB or anything. Just use PNG. And the thing what we need is, I don't need post-processing, so I don't need sequence or compositing. So first just render the image and see what is happening. So in this camera view we have something like this, and we have a lot of noise, and it's a little bit slower compared for our scene. And you can see we just moved our render layer, our lighting plane here. So just select that, just move all the things back to first frame, move to 1. We need to increase it a little bit higher, 1.75, and just render the scene once again. See, now everything is fine. Okay, now the problem is we have a lot of noise, so we need to adjust that in here. And the culprit is that sampling, and we need to increase the sample big. And also we need to adjust this. I'm just using that limited global illumination here, and we can just change it to 0, increase it to 2, just max value to 2. Transparency, we don't need that, it's just 1, and min to 0. You don't need no caustics. And in the performance tab, I'm just doing a simple math here. This 64 into 64, I'm going to use we having 1280 render, so I'm just using that 1/4 of that, that is that 320. And also we have that, and if I render again, that will render in big. part, and it will be much faster than before. Still we have that lot of noise here, see, and now we have 11 second, and just using that that here from to the limited global elimination, we don't know caustics, and that will adjust some settings here, and just using that samples to 500, changing the sample to 500, and that will take too much time for rendering. And also you can just add some more thing. We are doing the animatic render, so just use cache BVH, and also torrent faster renders, and this will take some more time, but I think this will help for animation sequences and save buffers also. I just render again, see what's happening, and you can see that it took almost 6.5 minutes, and still you can see a lot of noise is occurring here. You can just use if you are using After Effects for compositing, you can just use that remove noise function. But if you are just using internal Blender compositor or image sequencer, video sequence editor, you just need to increase the samples. So I'm just using that the same internal sequence editor, so I'm just increasing maybe 750 or 1000. I will render that, and once you get the final output, just use the render animation button, and that will render out the whole scene from 1 frame to 250 frames, and you can just use that output for final editing using our video sequence editor. If you don't know how to use that, just watch my previous tutorial about class dynamic class styling. In that I covered how to use the compositor and video sequence editor. So just keep watching from ECG.net and get more interesting tutorial.